Well, we get it rolling on the Krug Show. May the 30th, 4:37 on the West Coast, 7:37 on the East Coast. Eric Crocker in the house, former NFL player, now Niner podcaster and YouTube star. What's up, Croc? How are you, man?
I'm doing good. I don't know if I'm a YouTube star yet. I got to catch you and some other 49er content creators that are doing a great job out there.
Well, we are doing the show on both my channel and your channel at the same time. And did you already go today with Peacock? Did you guys do your Locked On Niners? And what did you? What was the topic?
We did do our Locked On 49ers. It should be streaming probably in the next couple hours. He usually does it around 6 p.m., I believe, where he kind of does the little premiere type thing. So it's going to be it's Winky Wednesday. So we have Nicholas Winkler on for every Wednesday episode. We recorded Tuesday, but the audio version's out on Wednesday. And we talked about some fun stuff, man. One of the things we talked about was pairing coaches with quarterbacks of the past and who would be better. So like Brock Purdy with Bill Walsh, Steve Young with Jim Harbaugh, and Joe Montana with Kyle Shanahan, who would win. And fun little offseason exercise.
Nice. I haven't talked to you since the draft. What do you think of the Niner draft haul? Not just who they drafted, but they're undrafted guys as well. Who are you most excited about in this draft class coming to the 49ers?
Well, I think it's hard to have just like this super overwhelming optimism from the class. 49ers didn't get to draft until pick 87, and they had to trade up for that. But I thought overall, I felt like they had a lot of good football players. My favorite of the bunch, I love just high upside, high end traits type guys. So D Winters, I mean, just the way that he plays, the way he fires around. He feels like a 49er linebacker to me, and it's very clear how you can see, how he'll fit into the 49ers defense once he kind of starts to understand what they're asking of him, because NFL defense is just a lot more complicated than college. But D Winters, once he can put that athleticism to use, he's someone I'm excited to see what that looks like. And then probably Darrell Luter, the cornerback out of South Alabama. He was a solid press guy. I think it was a little bit oversold just how good of a press guy he was. I was actually more impressed with his patience from off, being able to catch tight ends and receivers. That really jumped out to me, having that type of patience. So excited to kind of see, can one of those guys be the next late round guy that ends up kind of getting into the starting lineup for the 49ers.
Let's talk about Luter for a second. I asked him, I said, hey, I watched some of your South Alabama Jaguar games, and I'm like, they used a myriad of coverages. I mean, they played them off cover, they played off coverage, they played zone, but he was locked up on his side on the boundary playing man to man. And I'm just kind of wondering, there's an awful lot of guys who come into the NFL and they only can play zone and they can't play man to man. So we're used to seeing guys who can play zone who can't play man. But have you ever heard of a guy who could play man who couldn't play zone? Or plays on the line of scrimmage and can't play off coverage? I mean, better than anybody that there's nuances to playing off coverage and nuances to playing zone that you could argue it's more difficult to play man. But if you're not used to playing off coverage, if you're not used to playing zone, you could be like a fish out of water. How do you think Wilks ultimately uses Luter?
So I'm really big on what can you teach and what can't you teach, right? And there are a lot of things in football at all positions where it's like, well, I can coach him up there, but man, he has some stuff that just naturally he can just do that other people can't. And when it comes to Darrell Luter, man, just that man ability from press and off is extremely difficult. Man, just having that patience that he has and that time clock that is really slowed down. That's hard to teach. I can tell guys, hey man, stand in there, take away that space, and then once he gets there, kind of collide. And I could teach a guy to do all those things, but is he going to actually apply it? And Luter definitely does. And then as just a man guy in general, I think he's really good there. As far as zone goes, I think it's a lot easier to go from being a good man guy to playing zone as long as you have it upstairs, as opposed to the other way around. Think of a guy like Josh Jackson, the cornerback out of Iowa some years ago. He was a longer cornerback, had a ton of interceptions, and everybody was so high. And I'm like, the guy cannot play man coverage. He was just too long in his movements, clunky feet. But people were really excited because they see the interception totals. And, get to the NFL, he just did not transition very well. So it's definitely easier, air quotes, to teach a guy more zone principles, especially if they have it mentally. A guy who stayed away from a whole lot of the zone stuff, and they went more man heavy with him, and they do some combo and zone stuff off of him, was Stephon Gilmore with the New England Patriots. I had a little birdie, somebody on the team, and he was like, man, Stephon, you just have him play man coverage. So he never quite grasped the zone concept of things, but he was so good at man coverage, it just didn't matter. So I'm not sure Darrell Luter is Stephon Gilmore, but definitely with his ability, it's something that's definitely intriguing.
All right, so you came up, you played for Lodi High School, or Tokay High School in Lodi, I should say, Tokay. I had a couple buddies who played there. Arkansas Monticello is where you played your college ball. You came out in 2012, and you've played defensive back. So, what were you best at? What did you struggle with?
Oh man, and it's funny you asked that, because I kind of, when I'm evaluating prospects, I kind of use myself as a base. 6'2", almost 200-pound cornerback, and I kind of build off of that. I was definitely a press man guy. I learned more how to play off in the Arena League, because the Arena League, you just have to be able to play off, especially if you're going to line up in the middle. So I learned how to play a little bit more off coverage from there. But overall, like, if you just had a scouting report on myself, it would be, doesn't have over-the-top athleticism, good press man guy, good movement skills, but doesn't have the necessary long speed. And I think ultimately that was kind of my downfall.
It's funny. There's a lot of guys who can play man and can play zone, but there's an art form to playing off and absorbing the cushion correctly and having the right timing. Give us the coaching points on that, Croc. I mean, if somebody's looking at, a guy like Luter, he hasn't played a lot of off coverage. And when we're talking about off coverage, you're not lined up on the line of scrimmage. You're lined up off the line of scrimmage, and the receiver comes off the line of scrimmage. He's absorbing that cushion, but you at some point have to turn your hips and run with him. And then from that point on, you have to kind of take him and mirror him up and down the field. It sounds like an advantage, but it's very difficult to do, isn't it?
I'd say once you understand zone principles and then you understand route concepts, the game slows down so much for you. So, I coach a lot of 7-on-7. I coach a lot of high school football at Edison High School in Stockton, California. And, I could get out there with those guys, even though I might not be as fast as some of them. Like I coach Riley Brown. He's a 5-star running back that ended up ultimately going to USC. And I can get out there and I can guard him from off coverage zone, but not because I'm as athleticism. It's because the game is so slowed down and I understand concepts. So guys that do that at the highest level, like a Richard Sherman, right, where at the end of his career, was not the fastest or most athletic guy. Maybe wasn't even throughout his entire career, but he understood his strengths and he really understood route concepts. So the moment he sees a guy do one thing from like the 2 spot, it kind of tells him what the guy from the 1 spot is doing. And that allows certain guys to be able to play off and be able to trigger and be able to anticipate at a high level.
One of the things that really jumped out in the OTAs and the rookie camp is the improvement of Marcelino, McCrary Ball. What an interesting guy, Croc. He shows up in college at Indiana as a corner, then played his entire career there at safety. The Niners draft him as a linebacker. I asked him about halfway through the year, I'm like, why did you even come here? You had Greenlaw here, you had Aziz here, you got Warner, you got special teams backers. I mean, why here? There had to be better places for you to land a job. And he's like, man, these guys are dogs and they coach it up well here and they liked me. And I'm like, you know what? I'll invest the year and I want to be like them. I feel like I'm good enough to run with these guys. I saw him at a dinner the other night in downtown in the city, and man, Marcelino is just absolutely yoked up right now. He's put on good weight. I don't know what he's weighing. I would say probably 2.25. But I think he's going to take Aziz's job. You mentioned Winters. Does it bother you at all? I mean, I love the Winters film, especially the national semi against Michigan, where it looked like he was blitzing, but he wasn't. He was just reading his formation and, looking at the mesh point and not hesitating and just attacking and going downhill. shooting gaps. He looked incredible. When we asked him about it, Croc, he's like, yeah, they didn't use me as a blitzer. That was just all film study and me just recognizing off film, down and distance and knowing where I was supposed to be. But Winters had the lowest vertical of any linebacker at the entire combine. I think it was like 30 inches. How important is lower body explosion? Or do you look at that and just say, you know what? Yeah, he's 5'11" and change, 230. Yeah, he doesn't have great lower body explosion, but man, the production at TCU is enough. I mean, obviously you like Winters. I love him as well. I loved him in that game, but how do you see him transitioning? What's his ideal spot? Is he a weak side guy exclusively, or do you think he can play the middle, strong side? How do you see Winters transitioning?
Yeah, I think he's definitely a weak side type of guy. As far as the vertical goes, a lot of people is like, man, why they do all this testing? You just want to see how explosive of an athlete somebody is. So when you see a low vertical like he does, you want to see, man, does that show up on film? And I would say when you see him trigger and close on quarterbacks, it doesn't look like he lacks any type of explosiveness. So, a lot of times you want to see, does what you're seeing on film get confirmed by testing? I would say his 40-yard dash, or not even 40-yard dash, his vertical, I would say his vertical is kind of the opposite of what you see on film. So it wouldn't be necessarily a red flag for me, right? Compared to, let's say, DK Metcalf. And it was very clear when DK Metcalf was coming out, he could run fast. I was looking at the defensive backs, and they were getting in kind of this chase mode. I'm like, man, I think this big dude's going to run like a 4.3, and he did. Now, he also didn't do a whole lot of change of direction type routes, and I think his testing really confirmed that. But with his skill set, it's like, well, you don't need him to do this change of direction type stuff. Have him just run slants, over routes, digs, post, go routes, and stop routes where he gets the cornerback moving vertically. I think when it comes to D Winters, it would be, man, he's explosive, moving forward or laterally down the line of scrimmage, and they could use him in that way. I don't see an area where the lack of vertical explosiveness look to affect him. At least that's not what I saw. But maybe it affected his pockets and being drafted a little bit later, and maybe them questioning it or just finding a reason why he dropped down.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably why a guy is that productive and winds up, picked on day 3. I titled this thing "Potential Surprise Starter on the Niner Defense." What do you think? I mean, are we going to see any surprises? I mean, is Jair Brown have a chance to beat out Tayshaun Gibson? Does Luter have a chance in your mind to beat out Demo Lenore? Those are the ones that really stand out. Maybe Robert Beal. Does Beal have a chance to start at defensive end? Obviously, Isaiah Oliver steps in at the nickel. But do you see any of the young guys having a chance to bust through this summer and maybe earn a starting job?
I think out of all the rookies, the guy that has the biggest chance to start would probably be Luter, because I don't think the 49ers are solidified at the cornerback spot opposite Travis Ward. Now, they probably really like Diamador Lenore, and there's some other guys who I'll talk about who my surprise guy might be, but I think there's a legit opportunity for a guy to just step up in camp and say, hey, I'm just better than the other guys you have, whether it's Ambry Thomas, Diamador Lenore, or my surprise starter, which is Samuel Womack, right? Like, that's a guy who's kind of the forgotten guy. He started off the season last year in the slot, ended up being in this kind of more reserve role for whatever reason. I don't know exactly why. Hopefully you guys can get the insight on that. But man, he has a lot of traits. He has a lot of ability. He's not the tallest guy, but he's really long with the arms, and he has that really good speed. And the one thing I like about him, again, I talk about things that you can't teach. He just has a knack for being around the ball and making plays, whether it was him in college at Toledo or in the preseason with the 49ers, picking off 2 passes, forcing a fumble, knocking away another ball that ultimately gets intercepted. Just guys like that, they just continue to find themselves around the ball. He has a knack for it. And that's a guy who I could see taking that year 2 leap and ultimately kind of inserting himself into the starting lineup. So that would be my surprise starter that I don't think a lot of people are really talking about.
Yeah, that's a good call. It's funny, Womack last year, and I talked to him in the postgame a couple times, where he had gotten his hand on a ball, right? Where he had read the quarterback, and came really close to a pick 6, but didn't get it. Now, you understand the difference between year 1 and year 2. Year 1, man, everything's moving fast and you don't see everything quite as clearly. Year 2, man, everything is crystallized. You're seeing it. You're seeing it better. You're moving faster. You're just mentally more engaged through all the reps. Your game plan better. I saw last year what you saw, which is he got his hands on a few footballs. I expect him to this year take one or two of those back.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. I think Womack has got some special traits there. He's 5'9", but that's typical for an NFL corner, maybe a little on the small side, but he's got great arm length, great break, great intellect. I think Womack this year is going to take those two or three footballs last year that he got a hand on. This year, he's taking them back for 6. I really think we're going to see it.
I think where the NFL is going, especially the 49ers, they're starting to lean a little bit more quarters heavy. Well, if you're quarters heavy, you don't have to have these big press man type guys, right? And he has the length to be able to be a press guy, but can you trigger and diagnose things from off? And the 49ers playing a lot of quarters, keeping things in front of them on early downs, needing guys that can really turn a run and has that vertical speed. That's where he can really shine. I'd say you touched on from year 1 to year 2. And
Yeah.
I don't know exactly the 49ers defense. I'm not like a big scheme guy, but I see some of the things that they do. I can speak from my experience on maybe what he's kind of going through as a rookie and then how that translated how he can kind of get better going in the year 2. One, playing multiple positions, that's tough at the NFL level. And he was a guy that played outside. He also played in the slot as well. And I think a lot of people, because of the lack of height, would probably say he's more of a slot. But I think he's a legit outside guy. He can definitely play there. But they throw so much at you at those spots. It's not just, hey, I'm going to line up on the outside or I'm going to line up in the slot. And as soon as they call the play, like that's what it is. You have to know all these different adjustments, right? Whether there's 2 to your side, 1 to your side, does a guy motion from the other side? How many backs are to your side? How does that change your responsibility? Things that happen on the fly. You have to know at the snap of a finger, okay, now it goes from this to this, and then I have to be able to communicate that to the safety. Like there's so much that goes into it that happens fast. As a rookie, your head's kind of spinning a little bit trying to learn those things. So I think for a guy like him and some of these other guys too, who we see have like a better year too, like we saw, Diamador Lenore, I think the game starts to slow down a little bit, and then that's when you can kind of see that year 2 jump for some of these guys.
Let's get a couple supers here. Damon's got one for you. He says, coaches said last year Womack was struggling with run fits. That's why he was supplanted by Diamador Lenore. Yeah, I don't doubt that at all. Kaimana 7 says, will Brock Purdy be the NFL version of Jeremy Lin? And then brother Bob throws one my way. Says, Crock, you think Purdy has a dink and dunk arm? Pig in a pickle. There you go. Let's hit Purdy for a second. They had a Bleacher Report did a breakdown today, his projected stats for the year. This is what they gave Brock Purdy: 66% comp rate, 3,400 plus passing yards, 21 touchdowns, 7 picks, 42 runs, 120 rushing yards, a couple rushing touchdowns. Where are you on Purdy, Croc? I mean, I know that we've God knows we've all talked way more about the quarterbacks than we probably any of us really wanted to this offseason, but that's kind of the way it is. According to the reports, we're going to see Brock throw this week in Santa Clara. I can't wait to see if I'm there for it. What are you expecting from Purdy in year 2?
Well, I'm definitely expecting a lot more than 3,400 yards. Yeah, if he plays every game, which you have to cross your fingers. I think we just talked about that on Locked On 49ers. And I want to say a quarterback starting every game for the 49ers since like 2003 has only happened like 2 or 3 times, which is like mind blowing, right? Like that's crazy. But if he plays every game for the Niners, man, I mean, I could see him throwing for, 4,100 yards. And then they said 21 touchdowns. Man, he almost had 21 touchdowns in like 7 starts last year or whatever, 6 starts, whatever it was. So I think they kind of shorted him a little bit on some of those stats. As far as him being a dink and dunk thrower or having a dink and dunk arm, I don't think he has a powerful arm. But if you look at his scouting report, it says that he throws with he will excel at the NFL level in a team that runs play action and throws with timing and rhythm. And I think that plays right into his hands. So I don't think it's dink and dunk. I think it's just being able to hit guys in rhythm that's not necessarily too far down the field, because I don't think he has a powerful arm. So I think the 49ers offense aligns with what his strengths are. And dink and dunk, that's not something I would necessarily kind of align
Okay.
with how he.
Okay, so as far as the dink and dunk thing, because God knows I'm tired of fighting about this and arguing about this. Kurt Warner, by the way, did a whole video today on he doesn't think he's a dink and dunk guy. I always looked at dink and dunk as a way to say that a guy can't make all the throws. Like this guy, it doesn't have what we would call requisite arm strength. Like Nick Mullins, if you want to say Nick Mullins was a dink and dunk guy, yeah, because I don't think he can throw the deep out. I don't think he can get it in that window. I think that his accuracy wanes. I think the ball sails. It's low, it's high. It doesn't get out there quick enough. It gives the DB too much time to react. To me, when you say dink and dunk, it's a way of disparaging a player and saying he's not good enough to make all the throws. To me, I separate Brock from that. Is I think Brock doesn't have a big arm, but I think last year, now I actually thought when I saw him in his college film at Iowa State that he kind of was a dink and dunk guy that didn't have requisite NFL arm strength. But then after what, so like to me, if anybody who watched his college film and said that, that's fine, because that's what I saw too. But then after the season, but before the draft, I think he went to Arizona. He worked with some specialist. He found some more there. He talked about it. He found 4 or 5 miles an hour extra on that fastball. And to me, that slight difference took him from he can't make all the throws to he can make all the throws. And I think he demonstrated this year he could make all the throws. So I dink and dunk is a mindset of I don't want to challenge in the deep quadrants of the field. I don't want to challenge late in the down outside the numbers. There's certain throws I don't want to make, and defenses can try to force me to make them. I don't feel comfortable. I don't think Brock is that. I think he's what you said. He's on the lower level of arm strength, but he's in my mind, he's got enough arm strength to succeed. Now he did last year. I don't know if he will going forward.
I think he understands what his arm is and isn't, and he plays that to the highest level. Again, I brought up Richard Sherman earlier, right? And Richard Sherman, when you watch him play cornerback, he understood he was not a 4-4-2 cornerback. That did not stop him from being in Hall of Fame corner, right? I mean, he's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer, regardless of what some of his shortcomings were on the athletic side. So with Brock Purdy, I think he showed definitely more than enough to be able, yeah, I don't have a powerful arm. And I think there's certain throws he'll understand even more of, like, you know what? I threw this pass. I probably shouldn't be throwing that, right? There was some like, okay, I'm going to roll left. I'm going to throw back, cross my body, some balls that kind of floated in the air. Some things he tried to do, and it's like, oh, that was kind of stupid. That's not who I am. But as long as he plays within who he is, and there's a wide range of that in the throws that he's able to make, I think he'll be just fine. But again, I think with those throws, he just has to be in rhythm. And if he's off rhythm, then getting him outside the pocket, especially late in downs, he'll be fine. Like, he's not going to be a Josh Allen or somebody who can be late in the down and still throw a drive throw and it get to where it needs to be without it being in a lot of harm's way. So I think that's kind of the difference there. As long as he plays within rhythm, I don't think you'll see an issue, to be honest.
What do you think of Darnold, Croc? I mean, I haven't talked to you about Darnold, but you know, I will say this. I heard an interview that Tim Ryan did on the radio, and he's like, man, everything comes out of this kid's hand is like a jugs gun. I will say this, after watching Darnold for a couple days, he throws a very good spiral from all different trajectories. And it seems like he doesn't have any problem throwing a real tight spiral at all times. I don't know that I saw him throw anything other than a tight spiral in the 2 days that I watched him. But this guy's played in the league, and he's made a lot of mistakes, and those mistakes are real. So how do you come to grips with Darnold? Is Darnold going to be remade in this offense because they've got a better line, better offense, better weapons? Or is Darnold and what he was with the Jets and he was with the Panthers, eventually he'll be with the Niners?
I think Darnold, he was drafted where he was for a reason. This is a guy that does not lack any type of throwing ability. And I'd say he's probably the best pure thrower of the football on the 49ers. And bigger arm than Purdy and probably just cleaner from a mechanic standpoint than Trey Lance. And I don't think there's anybody that would dispute that. Now, that doesn't mean that he can be better than either one of those guys. So for him, it's, can I get to playing good football? This was a guy coming out of USC, especially even in that last year. Things got a little sped up for him. You started to see him kind of turn the ball over a little bit. He wasn't quite the guy that we saw as a redshirt freshman. He lost receivers, Juju Smith, Rogers. He lost the offensive lineman, and he was really asked to carry kind of a depleted roster at USC. And then that kind of carried over the hero ball stuff to the New York Jets and what they were for years, and with Adam Gase as the head coach. And then you see Le'Veon Bell come out and talk about how important coaching was, and that he noticed that, man, it's a big step down going from Mike Tomlin to Adam Gase. So you look at kind of some of the situations that Sam Darnold has been in, and I could see how people could be definitely excited about the potential of him, and maybe teams haven't really got the most out of it. Maybe he kind of needed that reset, kind of sitting behind Baker Mayfield for a little bit, and he kind of came in towards the end of the year, played well, had a rough last game, but heck, you go to the 49ers and you start looking around in the huddle, and it's like, man, that's George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, Christian McCaffrey, Kyle Juszczyk. Oh man, that's Trent Williams. It starts to feel a little different, and then it's like, hey, Kyle Shanahan's going to put me in positions to win. So if I am Sam Darnold, and again, what we've seen so far, bad quarterback play, but if I'm Sam Darnold, I'm looking at this as an opportunity to really show what I can do. Heck, there's no way this quarterback with one good elbow and this other guy that has played, can't start more than 2 games in a row, is going to beat me out. Like, that would be my mindset as a competitor and as Sam Darnold. So I think for him, if it's ever going to come together, this is the perfect situation for him. Again, it's been bad up until this point. Can he turn it around? I think he has the talent to, but he just has to go out there and be the quarterback that he probably feels like he is in his head. And this is the best scenario. This is the last chance he's going to really get to be that guy, but this is definitely the best situation as well.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm Sam Darnold, man, I'm showing up in Santa Clara this summer with a sense of desperation because, let's be honest, I think he knows if he can't do it here, if he can't have success here, it's probably done. I mean, it's probably a wrap on his career as a starter. I mean, he might be able to exist as a backup, but he won't get too many opportunities again if he doesn't make good on this one. Let's get to Trey Lance. He's only attempted 102 passes a couple of years into his career. He's completed less than 55% of them. Where are you with Trey Lance? I thought what I saw at the OTAs and was the best I've seen him look. The finger might have been a bigger issue than maybe any of us, put out there. I thought his spiral was, he threw more spirals. There were still some wobbly passes, but that high speed wobble was gone for the most part. Where are you with Trey? Where do you think he is as far as this competition? How do you expect him to play this summer?
Oh, well, he's definitely starting off as the number 2 guy, right? Like, if Brock Purdy was healthy, then Trey Lance would be number 2 guy. I think for him, it's just stringing together good practices and and it probably sounds cliche, but taking it one step at a time. A lot of people don't think that OTAs is like a big deal, but I think for Trey Lance, it absolutely is, right? Like, every time he goes out there, it's almost like he's auditioning. And for him, I just need to work on the little things, right? Just being comfortable playing in rhythm, maybe just letting it rip, not being so shy, right? Like, showing off some of that arm talent that you have, and him being healthy right now, I think that probably makes a big difference for him. So it's definitely one step at a time, one day at a time. Don't start thinking too far ahead, but for him, every single practice, I think, is very important for him to build some, not just confidence in himself, but in his teammates and coaches as well.
It's weird. It's like there seems like there's a lot of disappointment around Trey, and I don't understand that because to me, he is exactly what we thought he was in college. I mean, he was going to be a challenging evaluation for anybody, maybe even an unprecedented evaluation because of how little he played and the level that he played at. And now here he mixing an injury and, the 49ers being a little indecisive, and suddenly it's like, we're at a point where we still don't know what he is, but I don't know that it should be like, oh my God, I can't believe we don't know what he is. To some degree, shouldn't we have expected that it was going to take a while for him to kind of evolve into FCS, runner thrower to NFL pocket passer?
No, I think for what Trey Lance probably needed, I think we look at this team and it is a great situation for, uh, any quarterback, but not for the quarterback that has to win the Super Bowl, and only played 1 year at the FCS level. So, just the expectations of this team. And, I saw someone talk about James Wiseman of the Warriors and how
Right.
the development of James Wiseman did not match with the championship aspirations of the Warriors. Like they just wasn't on the same page with what he needed. And I'd say that Trey Lance is kind of in that same ballpark where, you got a guy kind of getting rushed out of there who has only started 4 games. I think only finished 3 of them. So if you want to say he's a bust because he's been injured, then I'd say, okay, yeah, that's been very disappointing. But from an ability standpoint, he has shown the ability to do everything. It has been inconsistent. How do you be more inconsistent? I would say playing. Unfortunately for the 49ers, he doesn't just have the opportunity. Just, hey, I'm just going to go out there, let it rip, play, gain experience. Like that's not where this team is. This team is more so where Brock Purdy is, where it's like, hey, he come in, you can win games. All right, let's roll with that. So I'm curious to see how he kind of develops behind the scenes. Those are things that you would have liked to, be happening now, but unfortunately, injuries, setbacks, things like that have kind of detoured that a little bit. And it's unfortunate for his situation. But obviously, the 49ers have definitely kind of rebounded very well.
I saw a video that you did on your channel on trading Trey for to the Commanders for Chase Young. Now when I just saw that here's the picture of it. You can kind of see the picture of it on my phone. But it says wild trade idea to get Chase Young. If the Niners are all in on Brock Purdy, here's why they should trade Trey Lance for the Commanders star defensive end. You brought this up on your show. Was this like a day ago or was it like a week ago?
Is that on Bleacher Report?
Yeah, it was on Bleacher Report.
Yeah, man, we did that show. It was probably
Couple
like a
weeks
week
ago.
ago, I think. Yeah.
So take us through it. What's your thought on that? I mean, it sounds like they're going to lean towards going with Brock, and if you look at the handwriting on the wall, you say, well, then there's Darnold there, and Darnold's got all this bonus money. Now they brought in another quarterback. It just seems very, very much like they're entertaining the idea of moving on from Trey, but who knows? They haven't made a move yet, and God knows they needed every quarterback they had last year and then some. What were you suggesting with your Chase Young discussion?
I think it made a lot of sense on both sides. Right now, maybe financially not so much for the 49ers because, if you trade for a guy like Chase Young, once that fifth-year option kind of
17 million fifth-year option is
you're going to
expensive.
have to pay him after. Well, they didn't pick up the fifth-year option. So if you trade for him, you have to start figuring out, okay, how do we keep this guy long-term? But you also have to pay Nick Bosa. So I don't even know if that works, especially if he turns out to be who you think or what you think he can be. But for the 49ers, just to kind of have that book in opposite Nick Bosa, a guy that has freak athleticism but has dealt with some injuries and some setbacks, doesn't have a lot of the sack totals aren't quite there, but has all the ability in the world, but also for Trey Lance, right? Going to a Washington Commanders team, I don't think their thoughts right now are Super Bowl. So that would be a great situation for Trey Lance to go to a team where they have some weapons, they got some guys there, but hey, we don't have to win the Super Bowl this year. So it's a guy that can really learn and work to take that next step. And also, if you believe in Brock Purdy and they like Sam Darnold and the way he's throwing the ball, and then you got the Brian Allen or Kyle Allen, the third string quarterback, I think you're kind of fine there, and you don't need to handcuff Trey Lance to be a backup in that room. Trade him, try to get something for him, and I think a guy like a high upside guy like Chase Young, I think that makes a lot of sense. I feel like for both sides, financially, maybe not so much for the 49ers.
Yeah. Now, if it came down to the Commanders showing interest, but would you rather have Chase Young than Montez Sweat, or would you rather have Montez Sweat than Chase Young?
I'd
Montez can be a little cheaper. Yeah. Chase has maybe got a little better upside, but man, Montez has been very, very consistent.
Yeah, he's been consistent. I think the trade would work better for them, like where it's like, okay, Chase Young, man, was it 7 sacks or 8 sacks or whatever in 3 years, dealt with injuries, torn ACL, all this stuff. They can kind of I can understand them moving on from him before Montez Sweat. Just in getting a potential, and again, we don't know, but a potential quarterback for the long term over in Washington. That just makes more sense to give up Chase Young in that type of situation.
One more super here from Double B Studio says if Trey beats Sam, that's that. If he don't, then the Niners can move on after this year. Okay, so we talking defensive end for a second. Are the Niners okay at defensive end? Or like right now, do they have enough at defensive end, Croc, or do they have to add a piece? Because I'm looking at their roster, and I love the roster. I think it's a terrific roster. They're deep at quarterback. They're really deep at wide receiver. Yeah, they could be better on the offensive line, but they're pretty deep there. They got a bunch of tight ends. They got a bunch of running backs. I love the depth at linebacker. There's a lot of young DBs now. But, man, the one thing that concerns me is if Nick Bosa missed a month, who would be coming off the edge for the Niners? I'm not a Cleveland Farrell guy. Kerry Hyder's long in the tooth. I thought Austin Bryant at the workout looked like he had really skinny legs. Beal is a 4-4 guy, but, man, he just didn't play a lot for the Dogs. And there's just not a lot else there. So where are you on defensive end? I mean, obviously, we're all hoping Drake Jackson is going to be awesome, and he looked great in the OTAs. I'll ask you about him in a minute, but where do you put defensive end? There was an article today saying the Niners got to go after Frank Clark. And to me, they are one really good edge away from being a very, very good football team that could win the conference. I mean, they might be able to win the conference without it, but that one veteran edge would really get them over the top, in my opinion. Are they going to get that player before camp, or you think they're going as is?
I think they're going as is, and they got the resources there, or the resources they've thrown out there are, I feel like, insurance for Drake Jackson. Like if Drake Jackson doesn't end up really taking a stranglehold on that edge spot, it's like, all right, we do got Cleveland Farrell, we do got Bryant from the Lions, and some of these other guys. So we could just continue to throw bodies out there like they've done with guys like Arden Key and Amenahu and Samson Ebukam. So I think from that standpoint, they want to see what Drake Jackson has. I'd say from a pass rush standpoint, they did go and get from Philadelphia Eagles.
Javon.
Javon Hargrave. So, you go and you get Hargraves, and, I just saw a graphic that showed he was top 10 in, just pass rush productivity, and you pair that with Nick Bosa, another guy who is top 10 in that. I think that's where your pass rush is going to really come from. And I think having Hargraves in the middle will hopefully free up a guy like Eric Armstead, which we saw Eric Armstead have his best year with Nick Bosa, but also DeForest Buckner, who is a terrific pass rusher as well. And then, in turn, Armstead ended up being a double-digit sack guy. So I think we are looking to get that production from that edge guy, but I think it's going to kind of be the interior guys along with Nick Bosa who end up ultimately being productive.
Double B Studio says, Mr. Crocker. And Mr. Crocker, very formal. He says, Mr. Crocker, you the best, bro. We're enjoying having Eric Crocker with us for sure. Drake Jackson. I mean, first of all, we should address the Niner defensive line. Now you got Hargrave and Armstead inside. And so the pocket, I think, is going to look quite a bit different because I expect Hargrave and Armstead to get penetration and to force that quarterback out the back door or the side door right into the lap of Bosa and or Jackson or whoever's at the other defensive end spot. This could be a very, very high sack total year for the Niner defensive ends because of Hargrave and Armstead playing together. What do you think?
Yeah, you think last year, man. I mean, it was really rough watching just if Nick Bosa's not getting back there, you weren't getting much production. And I was telling people like, man, I think the 49ers pass rush is a little overrated. It's like carried by Nick Bosa. But because of the 49ers pass rush and what it's been, everybody's like, oh, man, they got a great pass rush. I'm like, well, they got a great pass rusher. All right. I think now adding those two guys, it definitely should help the 49ers have more of a high sack total that's not all on the shoulders of Nick Bosa, who is what do you have, 20 sacks or hovering around 20 sacks. And this year, even if he takes a step back and has, 16 sacks, 15 sacks. But then if you have Hargraves that's hovering around 10, and then Armstead, if he turns it up because the other guys are getting more attention, he has around 7 or 8, then I can see those sack numbers being a lot higher for the 49ers.
As far as Drake goes, did you? I mean, you weren't at the OTAs, but man, I mean, Croc, this guy was awesome at the OTAs. Now, I don't know how much weight he put on. I haven't had a chance to talk to him yet, but he's clearly put on some upper body weight. But I was expecting him to look maybe a half step slower with the added weight up top. And that's not what I saw. I mean, I saw a guy who looked definitely noticeably stronger and bigger up top, but man, he was flying off the edge. I don't think I saw him, look that fast at any point last year. Is this the year? Do you think Jackson busts out and becomes, a 10 plus sack guy? What do you envision this year for Drake?
We talked about taking that second year leap for guys like Samuel Womack, and man, you hope Drake Jackson does. Now, when you talk about the edge rushing position, I think a lot of people wanted like edge in the draft, or they want an offensive tackle, and it's like, man, those guys, the ones that are good, they go really high. And Drake Jackson went at the tail end of second round. So excuse me, obviously he is a guy that really needed to work on some things, and maybe his body as well, maybe his mindset. He was at USC with Clay Helton. I mean, they were bad, and he went through several defensive changes in this from a schematic standpoint. Where it's like, is he an off-ball linebacker? Is he an edge rusher? And are you going to add weight to him? And he kind of got in between that, heading to the NFL. And I think now he understands more of what the 49ers want. And one thing I think the 49ers can hang their hat on, Kyle Shanahan is going to be very upfront. So I'm pretty sure in his exit meetings, it's like, hey, you got to get your stuff together. This is what I need from you so you can get through a full season. And it sounds like he went out and did that. So if he is good, then yeah, the NFL, especially the NFC West, is in trouble.
Offensive side of the ball. Give me your thoughts on Ronnie Bell, because I mean, I didn't think much of Ronnie Bell. In fact, when he was drafted, Croc, I was like, oh man, really? Why do you need Why do you need a seventh round receiver? You got Juwan, you got Debo, you got Ayuk, you still got Danny Gray. There's Ray. You brought in Conley. I kind of like Tay Martin as a possession receiver. Heck, Willie Snead is still here, but they draft Ronnie Bell in the 7th round, and I was not a fan of that pick. I just thought, mediocre size, mediocre speed. Just guy's got an ACL in his past, and I just was thinking, man, I just don't like that pick. And then I watched him at rookie minicamp. He just caught everything. Then I watched him at OTAs. He's catching balls in a crowd. Then I started doing a little deeper dive and studying him a little bit. And I found out that his dad wasn't just a coach. His dad was a wide receiver coach and still is a wide receiver coach. And you can see this kid. I'm not saying he's Cooper Kupp, but there's an awful lot of Cooper Kupp type resemblance there to Ronnie Bell. I mean, he's a really good route runner. He's got 38-inch vertical, so he's got kind of lower body explosion and quickness. You can kind of see it. He gets more separation than you think he would based on his 40 time. I'm starting to become a Ronnie Bell believer, man. What'd you think of that pick at the time? And what do have you studied him at all? What do you think of Ronnie Bell?
Yeah, I wish I had the luxury to watch him during the OTAs, but I will say what I saw on film, I wasn't necessarily impressed. I'd say this. The one thing that was very clear, and probably what jumped out to the 49ers, was this guy as a blocker, he just gets it. He was very physical.
Yeah.
He took pride in blocking. And watching that, I'm like, okay. I'm always trying to identify, like, okay, why do the 49ers want this guy? And it was very clear, like, man, that physicality, that mindset, he took pride in that. And, I know Kyle Shanahan loves that. Now, everything else that goes into playing the receiver, I just thought was not that great, which is probably why he was a 7th round pick. I thought that a lot of defenders, and again, I try to look at how are the cornerbacks and safeties, like how are they guarding him? And they were just squatting on all his routes. So all that told me was they are not threatened by him vertically. Now, he got TCU a couple of times in that bowl game, getting behind that safety that was matched vertically on him on post routes. But outside of that, I mean, they were still squatting on his routes, jamming him. He got pressed out of bounds. I'm like, okay, for a guy that has like a nice fluidity, he needs to learn to use it more. And then you tell me that his dad is a receiver coach. Now I was like, all right, well, why isn't it showing up more consistently on his film? Because if it was, he wouldn't have been a seventh round pick. So it's really cool to hear that he's doing well so far in the OTAs. And again, that's the first step. There are a lot of people that uh, don't think that OTAs matter, but I think for certain guys it does. And whether it's kind of creating this momentum for yourself or this confidence that you start to have in yourself and getting things going. So it sounds like he's heading in the right direction.
Brother Bob says, Croc, do you put Brock on the pup and start Trey at the beginning of the year? If so, why? We're hearing that. I don't know. I don't know what to believe. We're going to find out at the end of this week, right? What Brock throwing looks like, and we'll have a much better idea about his timeline. But it sounds like if you're listening to the Niners, they keep doubling down on the idea that he's going to be there week one. Shanahan seems really adamant about it. What do you think? I mean, are you looking for, what are they looking for? They're looking for a certain amount of arm strength. Are they looking for pain? How do you think they play their cards with Purdy at the beginning of the year? Because as the chatter here is thrown out, I mean, they could put him on that pup list and have what, 6 or is it 4 weeks? 4 weeks on the pup, 6 on the IR, to where they could take a look at Trey in the first month of the season, or Darnold, depending on how that goes. Well, how do you think they'll play their hand at quarterback with with the IR and the pup?
I think for the team it's risky, but that would probably be a great kind of situation for them. And why I say it's risky because, well, what if he just goes out and he starts like 4-0? Then it's like, well, how do you go to Brock Purdy, right? But you also give him a chance to kind of hang himself. And it's just like, all right, look, we got to see it. We finally got to see him start, 4 games in a row. It wasn't quite to our standards. We think right now that Brock Purdy's a better fit long term. And I think you feel more comfortable with moving on from Trey Lance. Because right now, I'm going to be, I don't feel comfortable moving on from Trey Lance until you know what he is. Because if let's say, he doesn't have that opportunity, and all of a sudden the team has a quarterback go down, and it's like, hey, we'll trade for Trey Lance or whatever, right? They trade for Trey Lance. He comes in, and it's a good situation for him. And all of a sudden, after about 3, 4, 5 games, you start seeing Trey Lance kind of balling. Now you're like, well, he's shown the ability. We just didn't see the consistency, and now he's starting to build that consistency. How stupid would you feel as a 49 organization that you never saw it through with the guy that you spent so much capital on? So I think ideally, again, it's a little risky because if he balls out, then you have this whole other problem on your hands. But also, you get a chance to kind of, hey, okay, now we know, and let's really move forward with Brock Purdy.
What is your feeling on where the Niners are on this? Because I totally agree with what you just said. I think the Niners have a pretty good idea what Brock Purdy is. And a lot of people will say, well, they can't move Trey because they don't know what Brock is. I think they know what Brock is. I think they don't know what Trey is. And that would scare me more. I would scare me a lot more. To me, the only way I would want to move Trey is if I got something of significance, because then I'm covered, right? If I get something of significance, then at least I'm covered if Trey becomes something. But if I trade this kid for a pick and he becomes something along the lines of Mahomes,
We got
I
to
don't.
use somebody else because Mahomes is like,
Yeah,
he's kind of in the class of
Mahomes
his
is on a
own.
different level. But
But yeah,
let's say he's well, who's a good comp besides Mahomes? I mean,
I know
you
what
know,
you mean, though. Let's
well,
say
I mean,
like he
like
has a
he
season like Jalen Hurts had last year.
Yeah, I mean, I think the reason I love the Mahomes one for Trey is because I don't see Mahomes as a runner. I see him as a passer who can run, and
Yes.
I don't see Trey as a runner. I see him as a passer who can run. And I think they reminds me a lot of Mahomes if he can develop, but that's a big if at this point. But I'd be way more concerned about the back end of the deal on dealing Trey if you don't know if you don't have a real good handle on what he is. Like if you're moving him, you better have a real good handle on what his upside actually is. Otherwise, you could look really, really bad. It could be your legacy.
The tough thing is, and this is in my honest opinion, that what he has shown in games is a lot of what you want, but then also it's mixed in with the things that you don't want to see, maybe a missed pass or errant pass, or oh man, you overthrew this tight end on this leak that's wide open for a touchdown, right? Like those are things that you don't want to see. But his power throws, man, that throw in the rain to who was it, Ray McLeod on a deep over in between two defenders, but then also the safety that was over the top, and he dropped it in there from like 25, 30 yards out. Like that's a special throw. And like those are all the like things like that, like throws like that are why you really want him. And you just haven't been able to see more of it because he hasn't played enough. Right. So think about like the last kind of live games we've seen. You watched him in against the Houston Texans. And it was kind of weird a little bit to start the first half, but he ended up throwing multiple touchdowns, ran for another one that got called back, completing 70% of his passes in a must-win game for the Niners. Then the next time you see him, he's playing against Green Bay in a preseason game, and he completes 4 out of 5 passes and a 75-yard touchdown to Danny Gray. And then you see him against the Texans in the preseason. That was shaky. Then you get to see him in the rain against the Bears. And it was good until it was a tsunami, and then it was terrible, right? And then the next time you see him out there, he completes 2 passes and he breaks his ankle. So it's like such small sample size, but he has shown you a lot of the high-end ability. The consistency is just not quite there. And if he goes somewhere else and they just give him the opportunity to do that, I think the 49ers kind of feel a little stupid if it turns out being what he has shown the ability to do, just not the consistency yet.
Do you believe the 49ers actually want to have an open competition, or do they not? Do they fear the competition because they would lose control of the situation, or do they welcome the competition and they're just kind of downplaying it?
I think Kyle Shanahan would love to just be like, this is my quarterback every game, every year. And unfortunately, because of injuries and, just everything that's going on, some of the things that are self-inflicted, it just hasn't been that. And I think it's unfortunate for Kyle Shanahan. I actually feel really bad for him, even though he's kind of, he's done this to himself in a sense, but it's really just, it sucks. I think he would just be like, hey, Brock's our quarterback. That's our guy. We don't want it to be a competition. The tough thing is if Trey Lance starts to take that next step, which you said, hey, ball's coming out of his hand, so it looks a little better. And if he just gets more and more comfortable, then he can kind of force a quarterback competition. But I don't think Kyle really wants that.
At the end of the day, I just think that they're prioritizing their own timeline over Trey's. Like last year was about Trey's timeline. Now it seems like it's about Kyle's timeline, Lynch's timeline, Trey's timeline, like kind of be damned. You know what I mean? Like they still want to see Trey develop, but everything's about their timeline. And that's what they love about Brock Purdy, is that he's ready to win right now. And that jives with their timeline. That's what I see it as. I don't know that they've really changed their thinking on Trey. They've just kind of prioritized their timeline over his. That all being said, there's other aspects of this football team. What couple things before we let you go? What did you think of the 2 tight ends they drafted? The Alabama kid in the 3rd round, and then the Oklahoma kid in the 7th round. The more I watch the film of both those guys, the more I love the Oklahoma kid and don't love the Alabama kid. To me, I see Braden Willis as a competitor, feisty. He's going to fight for every yard. He loves to block. He loves contact. I could see him beating out Ross Dwelly for a roster spot. Latu, I see some fluidity there, but that's about it. I don't see a lot there. What do you see with those 2 guys?
I wish I had my notes right here. And before I say what I think about these 2 tight ends, I want everybody to know I did say some positive things about the draft picks. I did like Luter. I talked about him potentially, competing for a starting spot, at the outside corners position. I talked about D Winters. Really love his game. I'm excited about him, maybe more so than any other draft pick. With that being said, not necessarily in love with the 2 tight ends that they picked. Now, when I look at Latu, I think he has an overall good skill set or game. Like when you watch his film, I think he was a smooth route runner. I think he was a little nuanced versus man, but then kind of lacked that explosiveness to kind of separate from defenders. So I thought he might struggle a little bit versus man coverage. And then when I looked at Bell, or not Bell, excuse me, the tight end from Oklahoma, I'm like, he's not really a tight. Like he feels more like an H back to me, a guy that you kind of want to have as an offset guy, a guy that can block and like you can sneak him out. Because again, he's another guy I think that will really struggle against man coverage, especially some of these more athletic cornerbacks. It just didn't look like his game as just this pure tight end. I know that's where they're lining him up right now, but having him as more of a use check guy, where hey, we could put you in that backfield, have you sneak out, have you block. You could do those things. You can put him with his hand in the dirt at tight end, and maybe you can sneak him out from there, but also have him block. And you can also split him out and throw some screens with him out there blocking on the edge. But if you're wanting these guys to be, and again, this is an extreme version of a tight end, but like Travis Kelsey, that's not necessarily what their game is.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'll say this. The one thing about Latu that's nice is that you can see the fluidity, and when you're a fluid athlete, then he's got ability as a receiver, and he's got good size. So we'll see. I mean, the thing about Bama is they got so much talent on the field that week to week, there's all kinds of guys running around out there that just don't. It seems like to me the blue chip teams like Georgia, LSU, Clemson, Bama, Ohio State. There's all kinds of talent that is some of these guys stars, some of them come off the bench, some of them never play, but doesn't mean that they can't play at the next level. What's your thought on Beal? I mean, he's 250 pounds and he runs in the 4.4s. That right there is super intriguing. But then you look at his career at Bama or at Georgia, he barely played. And he couldn't get on the field. And when he played, he didn't produce that much. He did lead them in sacks 2 years ago when Trayvon Walker went first overall. It was Beal who actually led Georgia in sacks. But what's your thought on Beal?
Real quick, let me double back on Latu real quick because I pulled up some of my notes on him. All right. So I put versatile in Bama offense, will line up detached, hand in the dirt, and offset. Maybe not the strongest, but definitely a willing blocker. Nuanced route runner, verse man, understands soft spots for zones, attach the second level blocker. So he would reach the second level and block like maybe he'd chip a defensive lineman and then reach the second level and block linebackers. And I thought he did that pretty well. Had a pancake at the second level against LSU. And when he opens up, he has a pretty good stride, but he's not going to blow anybody away with speed. So that was kind of my initial thoughts on him pre-draft. So before the 49ers took him. But as far as Beal goes.
Yeah, what do you think of Beal? I mean, Beal seems like a boomer bust guy in that he's got unbelievable wingspan and foot speed. And if all he's got to do is set the edge against the run and burn the edge against, in any passing situation, maybe it's a good fit. But man, there's not a lot to go on there.
I think the tough thing when you put on any Bama film is like it looks like a lot of thinking on their way to the quarterback. So they're kind of asked to do this kind of like, okay, see what they're doing, and then, okay, go. Instead of just, hey, man, you're 6'4", 247 pounds, super long arms, 4.4 speed. Just pin your ears back and get after the quarterback. You didn't see a whole lot of that, and maybe the 49ers in his Y9 were asking to do that. Now, for me, there's a huge red flag, and we just talked about this on Locked On 49ers the other day, and I threw it. Actually, where's it at? I had like this bag, and it was red, so I kind of threw it as a red flag. But the red flag to me is, and again, draft him in the 5th round, you just kind of get to see what happens. But for a guy who has the physical traits that he has, and you see all these Georgia guys flying high off the boards, why is he the only one to go 5th round? Right? Like all these other guys are going 1st round. I mean, you talked about Walker, but there's been a ton of them from the interior guys, edge guys. They just had an edge guy go to the Philadelphia Eagles at the end of the 1st round this past draft that just happened. Every year we're seeing these guys on these loaded, stacked defensive line or front 7 go really high and build a guy who's there the longest, 5 years or 6 years, and has probably the craziest traits out of all of them. Walker has some crazy traits, but I mean, everything from a prototype that you would like. And he goes in the 5th round. And I just thought that was very interesting. And it's not just all about production, because the other guy that went in the 1st round, he wasn't a high production type guy. I think he had 3 sacks.
You talking about Trayvon? Trayvon didn't. You talking about Trayvon? Or are you
Well,
talking about Nolan
even
Smith?
Trayvon Walker, but the other one that just went to the Eagles
Yeah.
at the end of this draft. I mean, he had like 3 sacks. Trayvon Walker, he wasn't a high sack guy. And I think, again, a lot of it I think has to do with how they play defense. But even then, those guys are going high. Why is Bill the one that is there for 6 years and then gets drafted in the 5th round? With the traits that he has, it's not like, well, Bill is only 5'11" and has short arms. Like, no, man, he is the prototype as it gets, especially with the speed. And still, teams are like, I don't see it. So I'm intrigued with his like high-end athleticism. I'm intrigued to see if he fits more of a pin your ears back, get to the quarterback style that the 49ers play, and they just let him be that athlete. But I think there's a lot of growing that needs to happen with just having a pass rush plan on his way to the quarterback. But he's had a long time to kind of get that under wraps, and it hasn't done it yet. So I'm interested to see how it works, but he's not my favorite pick of this class.
3 quick ones before we say goodbye. One guy that really jumped out to me, Croc, is Deshaun Jameson. And, he's a smallish corner, played 5 years for the Longhorns, but very experienced. I love the way he comes up and runs support. He goes low. He's very decisive, plays fast. And then as a return guy, he's really special. Did you look at Jameson at all from Texas? And I'm not sure why he went undrafted. He ran pretty well. He's got pretty good coverage ability, and he's an outstanding return guy. To me, this guy's an interesting guy because if he can make the team as the last corner, then maybe at wide receiver they don't have to go with Ray McLeod and a return guy. Maybe they could go with a Ronnie Bell or a Tay Martin or Isaiah Winstead or one of these other receivers. What do you think? You see anything that you like in Deshaun Jameson?
I haven't watched him yet. He kind of slipped through the cracks on me. I did watch Isaiah Winstead.
What'd you think of him? A lot of stop and start there. He didn't run a great 40 time, but man, 88 catches for East Carolina. That's a lot of production.
I think there's a certain area that he can be, utilized. That short area separation, I think, is definitely there for him. You talked about start and stop and just kind of understanding how to win, right? Because he's not the fastest guy, so he's not going to win with speed. So underneath, he understands how to kind of get cornerbacks or defensive backs to stop his feet and then get them off balance a little bit onto their heels, and then he can break off his route and then create enough separation for him to catch the ball and maybe get upfield. If he has to outrun a guy, I don't think that's necessarily a strength of his. So I don't know if he's a legit outside type receiver for the 49ers or just in the NFL in general. I think if you watch some of the games, he had a huge game. Gosh, who was I watching again? He had like 150 yards. But a lot of it was 5-yard out, 3-yard out, 2-yard out, slant. It's like a lot of short to intermediate stuff. And I think that's where he was excel. The moment they did try to throw a slot fade to him, he was kind of locked up from the jump. So, and he was trying really hard. So the vertical threat speed isn't quite there. And I think you could see that in the 40-yard dash time that he ran. But a guy that potentially can be a red zone threat on the outside, but definitely more of a big slot type guy, kind of reminiscent of Jalen Hurd a little bit, just not as big. Jalen Hurd was a really big guy.
Yeah. Isaiah Oliver, upgrade from Jimmy Ward at the nickel or not?
I say Jimmy Ward finished very strong at the nickel position once he kind of embraced playing it. I've watched a lot more of Jimmy Ward in the slot as opposed to Isaiah Oliver. So I don't want to answer if it's an upgrade or not yet. I'd say that's a question mark because I didn't go back and watch Atlanta film with him specifically in the slot. Now, I watched a lot of them coming out of Colorado, and I remember evaluating him as a prospect, but he was an outside cornerback then. Playing in the nickel, that's something that's still a little new to me in the sense of, what he looks like from there. Intriguing, though, because I didn't take him for a guy that would play in the slot with his movement skills, but it sounds like last year he did well and had a really good completion percentage against him in favor of him. As opposed to the opponent. So that's something that's definitely intriguing.
Yeah, I mean, to me, Oliver is coming off his best year, and I didn't like him at Colorado that much, and I thought he was pretty inconsistent outside in the NFL early on. I kind of feel like maybe he just found his calling. He's really good in that two-way break. He's a veteran. He's smart. He's got pretty good size. I thought that was, if you just watched his film last year with the Falcons, he sure looked comfortable. All right, let's finish up with the running backs. this is another area where the 49ers under Shanahan have done a really good job at like locating guys after the draft. Elijah Mitchell, 6th-round pick. I mean, Jordan Mason, undrafted free agent. Jeff Wilson, before that, Mostert. Now, granted, Kyle didn't bring in Mostert, but the Niners have had a lot of late-round backs who've done it. This year, they go to camp with McCaffrey, Elijah, Jordan Mason. Then there's Ty Davis Price at LSU, who was a 3rd-round pick. And then Ronald Awatt out of UTEP and Kalen Laburn out of Marshall, who started at Florida State. And when you watch the Awatt film and you watch Laburn, you can see the talent there. And we all know that the other guys have a lot of talent. What do you think? Who's the odd man out? Are you a fan of Ty Davis Price? Are we going to see him reach another level this year, or is he going to get cut?
I really like Ty Davis Price and his movement skills. Now, I ain't like him, for like a 3rd-round pick. And I just thought it was kind of ridiculous that they spent back-to-back 3rd-round picks on running backs. But just from his ability, who he reminded me of? He kind of reminded me of Kevin Barlow or Kevon Barlow, however you say his name.
Yeah,
but,
Kevin.
Barlow back in the day, where he wasn't this super thumper, but he was a big guy that was a little bit light on his feet and he could move a little bit. And that's what he kind of reminded me of. I'm interested to see if that fits what the 49ers want, because it feels like they were trying to get that back between him and Trey Sermon. But then it's like, nah, just get these one-cut guys that can get downfield with the Elijah Mitchells of the world, with the Jordan Mason and, some of these other guys that they just got undrafted. I feel like one of these undrafted guys is just kind of a 49ers ritual. One of those guys will make the squad. So who's going to be the odd man out? If there is any one of those guys, and they might try to salvage that 3rd-round pick by keeping Ty Davis Price around, but he was a late 3rd, and they might say, you know what? Nah, man, this spot's up for grabs. So I could see if there's going to be an odd man out, it'll probably be Ty Davis Price.
And McKivitz, you believe in McKivitz at right tackle, or do you think you think that's a competition? Is Jalen Moore get in there? Is Joey Fisher get in there? Pryor, Leroy Watson, or do you believe in McKivitz?
Oh man, I think you want McKivitz to be good. There's not a whole lot of just stacked, loaded offensive line around the league, and everybody's trying to figure out how to get 5 legit starters. I don't know if McKivitz is a legit starter, but I think just his experience in the offense, playing multiple positions, he might just be your best bet. And if that's the case, all right. But, man, I have nightmares of watching him in that Texans preseason game. I know it's just one game, but golly, I mean, there were guys coming free between him and Jalen Moore. I thought they were just having a contest of who can just whiff the worst on some of these pass rushers from the Texans. I mean, it was one of the worst pass blocking games that I've ever seen. So, hopefully we don't get that version. We get more of a version of, like, I think it was him against the Rams week 18 that in the must win that the 49ers needed against the Rams to go to the playoffs in 2021. Hopefully we get that kind of version of a guy, because the last time I remember seeing him, it wasn't very good.
Croc, is that a Giants hat you got there? I like that. With the G. That's the G hat.
Yeah, pick that up. Stock in California. Let's go.
I like that. All right, man. Hey, appreciate your time. Tell people, obviously they know you, they know your channel, but when are you streaming again? What kinds of things you got going on the channel this week?
Yeah, I should be streaming tomorrow. I'm going to get my guy Greg Pinelli on to kind of talk about Trey Lance's mechanics. He did an in-depth breakdown, and Greg's awesome, man. He trains guys like Josh Allen and the quarterback that just got drafted for Fresno State. Can't think of his name right now. Hayner, yeah, Jake Hayner. And I mean, just a ton of guys. And he really understands the quarterback, the mechanics behind it and everything that really goes into it, really breaking it down. So he kind of, from what he was able to, see from all the throws that Trey Lance did during OTAs, again, it's not live. It wasn't against the defense or anything like that. But from what he was able to see, he really kind of dove into before what it looked like, some of the issues, and then now, and what things might be the same, or what things might be slightly different. And then, hey, can he do it? And, when the live bullets are flying, or what goes into being more consistent with it. So he's awesome with that stuff. He's going to break it all down for everybody.
That's tomorrow on your show. By the leaving says D-Hop landing spots, no Eagles. I'm just praying no Kansas City. I don't want to see D-Hop in Kansas City. Anywhere but Kansas City or Philly, is fine with me. He wants to go to Buffalo, fine. Just please no Kansas City, please.
Oh man, yeah. And I shoot, man. I wouldn't mind seeing him on the 49ers because he just brings something the 49ers just don't have. Who's that physical, aggressive at the catch point guy? Right? Like who's that guy that makes you right even when you're wrong? And that helps all your quarterbacks out. And they just don't have that guy. You can't count on Brandon Ayuk to be a consistent contested catch guy. I don't think that's Deebo Samuel's game as well. Is I don't even know if it's I know it's not Ray McLeod's game, but I don't know if it's Juwan Jennings' game. It doesn't seem like that's his thing, and it hasn't really quite been George Kittle's game. It was Kendrick Bourne's game, and they don't have Kendrick Bourne anymore. So maybe go get a D Hop, and he brings a different nuance to this offense. Something that I feel like that's been needed for a while.
Yeah, my only question with that is, man, I mean, if you're going to spend money on a veteran, doesn't that have to be an edge guy? Doesn't I mean, my big fear is that you're going to get 3 weeks into this game, into this season. Bosa's going to be down for a month, and you're going to be looking at Kerry Hyder and Austin Bryant and going, "Oh my God, no! They need another edge rusher." I think they look. I love Hargrave, and I would go do that move again. Saying goodbye to the three guys, Willis and Amenahue and Ebukam, and bring in Hargrave. I would do that again. I think most Niner fans would. But, man, you lost 700 snaps there on the defensive end, and I'm not thrilled. I mean, I love Drake, but I'm not thrilled with Farrell or Bryant. So we'll have to see. I would love it if they could have one more edge rusher who scared somebody.
Right. Before we get out of here, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
All right. So I see on your graphic there, New York style pizza. So
New York style sausage company. There they are. Yep.
Oh, New York style sausage. Okay. Well, I was going to ask you about pizza, right? So
okay,
you tried New York style pizza?
I don't mind it. It's thin, right? I kind of like the New York style pizza over the Chicago style pizza,
okay,
which is kind of like quiche. It's too much tomatoes.
It's more like lasagna than actual pizza, huh?
Yeah, I mean, like, okay, if I don't like, if I'm like in Chicago and I go to like Gino's East or Lou Malnati's or one of those places where where their deep dish is really, really, really good, then I don't know. There's something about it that's a little bit different than if you just go like deep dish pizza in California. You know what I mean? I don't know. What about you? Where are you on the pie front? Do you like deep dish, or are you a New York style guy?
I think I'm more of the New York style guy, but I did have some good deep dish out in Chicago. I was there week 1, 49ers versus Chicago Bears, and I tried it. I think it was Gino, something like that.
Gino's East.
Yeah, and it was
Gino's East. Yeah, that's the spot. It's on Division.
But I also, I do some stuff with Underdog Fantasy, promo code Crocky, and they flew us out there, and we were out in Brooklyn and New York, and they took us out to get a slice of pie.
Yeah.
And it was good. It was good. So I think I got to lean towards the New York style.
When you played for the Jets, where did you live? You live in Jersey?
Yeah, no, we were in Morristown, New Jersey.
Okay.
Yeah.
And where did you go to camp? Where was camp?
Camp was in Cortland, at Cortland University.
Okay.
So it was like more like upper New York. It wasn't in New Jersey, which I think they do now at the facility, which they have a solid facility for real. But yeah, it was back then. It was like you're going to the university, to the college. Now, and that was fun in itself, but there was like students there and stuff. So it's kind of
now the chat. Of course, we're talking pizza. The chat's coming up. Waveware says Detroit style. Have you had Detroit style pizza?
No, and Detroit's like one place I have not been. So now I can't speak on Detroit style pizza.
Now, Detroit style pizza is like a square pizza, and they basically, it's like no crust. It's like meat goes all the way to the perimeter.
Huh.
But I'll say this: there's a Costco Detroit style pizza that I've gotten a bunch of times, and it's so good. It's so good. And Digital Drew, who joins us, he's from Chicago, works on Mortal Kombat in Chicago, says Lou Malnati's and Pequods all day. I've never heard of Pequods, but I know Lou Malnati's. So, and then now we got 49er Gang in the 916. He says Gold Dust Pizza in Sutter Creek, Copperopolis, and a couple other towns in California is the best pizza in Cali.
Oh man, I'm from Stockton, man, so I got to lean towards Eddie's Pizza out there on Ben Holt. That's the spot right there, Eddie's Pizza out in Stockton. You know.
There you go. There you go. Have you been out to? When was the last time you came back to Stockton?
I was just there 2 days ago, so I'm
okay.
always kind of
man,
back.
You're all over the place.
Yeah.
All right, man. Hey, thanks for the time. Good luck with the channel. I know you're kicking butt and taking names. And are you coming out for camp this year?
I'm trying to, man. With it, we're Peacock and I were trying to get credentialed. I have been credentialed in the past when it was Bob Lang. He used to get me in and everything I needed, but Lang's not there anymore, and it's been a little tougher to get those credentials. So we're working on it. We'll see. It's a little harder for podcasters than it's for guys that write or and that haven't been consistently there. So we're working on it. We're working on it.
I hear you, man. Well, we'd love to see you out here, and if you come out this way, dinner's on me, man. I'll take you out. We'll hit. We can either hit New York style Italian sausage, or we can. They've got restaurants, or we could go pig in a pickle barbecue. Yeah. You got any favorite barbecue? I got a barbecue sponsor, Pig in a Pickle, and it's absolutely amazing brisket. I mean, amazing.
Oh, they got brisket. I'm in. Let's go. I like the New York style sausage paws, but the brisket. Let's go. I'm down with that. Let's go.
Croc, have a great night, man.
I played football in San Antonio my rookie year in the Arena League, and Texas is kind of known for the brisket. So that they kind of turned me on to a totally different kind of meat that I hadn't had before.
Now, when I worked for the Sacramento Gold Miners, they were in Sacramento. Then they switched in year 2, and they went to San Antonio to become the San Antonio Texans. You played in San Antonio, though, was it World League?
Nah, Arena Football League.
Arena League. Okay, yeah. And was it Texans still?
No, San Antonio Talons.
Talons. There you go. What do you think of San Antonio? Not a bad town. It's hot as hell, though.
Oh man, I loved it. A lot of people kind of talk bad about it because it's not like Houston. It's not like Dallas. It has more of a small town vibe, but it's a big city, right? It's
what'd you think of the Riverwalk? You like Riverwalk?
I thought it was chill, man. It took some chicks out, on the Riverwalk, and it's like fancy kind of, you get dinner by the water and everything like that. And we had some sponsors of the team that would give us these food vouchers. So, I was sliding the vouchers under the table, that was good for the dinners and everything. But no, San Antonio, I liked it. It had like nice little vibe for everything. You had stuff for the kids, SeaWorld, Six Flags, Marine World, they had fun stuff for adults. It was cool. It had a nice little vibe to it. I like San Antonio.
There you go. Randall says Riverwalk was awesome. And then we got this one, David Hasselhoff, who says Eddie's Pizza is aight, bro. It's not even all that. All right. Well, there you go. Yeah, you can tell Croc that Eddie's isn't good. Croc's a fan.
It was good, man. We just had Michael's Pizza 2 days ago for my daughter's birthday. So I just had Michael's Pizza, and that was good too, man. That was good too. So.
Now you got jerseys left and right before we let you go here. You got McCaffrey 23. Is that a Laker jersey I'm seeing right there?
Yeah, man, I'm a big Laker fan. So we got the MJ, aka Magic Johnson.
Ooh, that's nice.
We got the McCaffrey, and then we got my guy Trey Jenkins. Trey Jenkins, he's still there at San Jose State, man. Signed my jersey for me and everything, game worn. So we got Drew Jenkins. This is Drew's. Trey is his twin brother. So
nice.
Trey is all conference over there at San Jose State. 2 guys I trained for some years out in Stockton. So those are my guys that take care of me.
We got this one. Digital Juice says Rico's in South Modesto is the best I got as a kid. I don't know if you ever heard of Rico's in South Modesto. There you go.
I'll try it though.
Tim Donahue says Rocco's in Walnut Creek. I don't know about Rocco's. I'm not going to say it's not good. But to each their own. Hey, Croc, great stuff, man. Love your channel. Keep it rolling. We're big fans, and hopefully we'll get a chance to chop it up coming this summer and talk a little Niners in camp or in the preseason.
Awesome. Can't wait. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, man. There you go. Eric Crocker stopping by on the Krug Show. Kind of a combo show today between Eric's channel and my channel, both stopping by on the Krug Show. All right, let's thank our sponsors. We are brought to you by Pig in a Pickle, 2 locations, Emeryville and Corte Madera. If you're in Marin, it looks like this.
New York style sausage was started over 70 years ago. We are the largest producer of fresh Italian sausage on the West Coast.
What makes our sausage in New York style is really the recipe came from back east, from New York, from Connecticut.
If you look at all of our labels, there's maximum 4 or 5 ingredients, which we're really proud of.
There's no preservatives, no MSG, fresh in, fresh out.
The pork comes in fresh, goes out fresh. There's never any freezing throughout the process. We've always used fine quality cuts. We're never gonna deter from that. It's one of the reasons why our sausage is so good. I guarantee you put our sausage up against anybody else's from a flavor standpoint, no one will beat it, hands down.
Hey, do yourself a favor and do me a favor. Go buy a package of the New York style Italian sausage. Guaranteed you will love it, guaranteed.
All right, welcome back to the Krug Show. Darren Ty says, Larry, how about the Giants? I can't lie, I don't want them to win because I hate Farhan and Gabe, but they have impressed me so far, especially the last few weeks. Giants are playing well. They go tonight against the Pirates. I was just looking at the matchup tonight. Giants are minus 160 favorites to beat the Pirates. It's Brebbia as a bullpen starter. He's the opener against Oviedo. So Brebbia's pitched really, really well for the Giants. Giants playing well. Their over-unders 8.5 runs. I see maybe go over tonight. The Giants are starting to swing it. The weather's been pretty good. Maybe we'll go a little post-game tonight. Now, tonight, by the way, it is 6 o'clock, 45 minutes from right now. The great Vish Kumaran is going to stop by. We'll talk more Niners with Vish Kumaran. We'll get his thoughts on where the 49ers are and chop it up with Vish coming up right in about 45 minutes from this moment. And then we'll watch a little bit of the Giants game tonight. Maybe in the post-game, I'll jump in post-game and bring Danny aboard. And I know Danny's been doing a bunch of stuff on his channel after Giants games. I haven't really gotten into the Giants that much this year because I just thought they were going to be bad. I've got to reassess. They're now playing well, and they're starting to be kind of interesting. And it all started when they finally took my advice and called up Casey Schmidt. Should have kept him out of spring. Had a great spring. Instead, they sat him in the minor leagues. Now they've called him up, and he's swinging it, and he's playing well. So good for the Giants. And then MF says, Larry, Ned should come on when the Giants go down to L.A. in a few weeks. I just texted yesterday with Ned. Darren Ty says, yes, get Ned. Yeah, well, maybe I'll dial up Ned tonight and see if I can get him on tonight. But yeah, 6:45. Check me out with Vish on the Krug Show, talking Niners. And then tonight after Giants Pirates, tune in again for more Krug Show. Tomorrow we're in Santa Clara. OTAs continue. We'll bring you all the sights and sounds from Santa Clara. We'll have lots of videos and stuff coming on the channel. I did a big breakdown on all the 49ers rookies. Did the deep dive on the scouting reports by Dane Brugler. So my son has put out a ton of videos on the channel. So check that out on the Krug Show on YouTube. And let's check our running total. Here we are. If you've yet to hit like and subscribe, please hit like and subscribe. If you hit like, it helps the algorithm just help more people find us. And if you hit subscribe, you'll be added to our subscription base of 18,386. We just got to 18,000. Now we're almost at 18,400. So thanks to all of you for subbing to the Krug Show. Appreciate each and every one of you. And that's going to do it. I'm going to go get a little something to drink, cool down, and then join me at 6:45 Pacific, 9:45 Eastern. Vish Kumaran stops by in less than 45 minutes, and we'll talk all things Niners. Until then.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of. Careful, you gon' get exactly what you asked for. Careful, whatever you bring me getting handled. I answer to no one, I don't need to hassle.